Hello, hello. Let me say that this is one heck of a chapter. In part, it's because this overlaps most heavily with Mark Breedlove's passion and research. And we have an opening vignette about gender identification, and it's a poignant story, and we get back to it at the end of the chapter, which is also the case. What is motivation? There's been debate on this going back decades. External motivation, internal motivation, as is often the case, these two interact together, not unlike nature and nurture. And that graphic is easy to dance to. And it's pretty clear. Drive reduction model, Hull, even before I was born. He was a big proponent of that. Optimum arousal model, Yerkes Dobson law, 1908. Difficult to test. If you have a difficult test, you may get sleepy. And there's a graph on the next page. On the y-axis you have performance. On the x-axis you have arousal, and sort of looks like a normal distribution, upside down U, and you want to be in the zone, sort of in the middle of that. And there's Walter Buchanan, 1932. No relation, but he's famous. Homeostasis, sometimes referred to as wisdom of the body. And on the next page, there's a graphic dealing with set points, negative feedback. The hypothalamus is going to be big on this chapter for many topics. And this is a little dated. I can't remember the last time I ran into steam heat, but so you have systems that keep you in the zone, the comfort zone for temperature. Unfortunately, there's research indicating that males and females may have different temperature preference zones, and males sort of set the standards, which makes the workplace uncomfortable for some. And we're dealing with pleasure again, Olds and Milner, 1954. And this is now becoming a relatively old story. But there's the VTA, that this is the dot here, ventral tegmental area. Nucleus accumbens is there, but it projections go to more than just nucleus accumbens. And dopamine is thought to be important for this. And brain stimulation, I've tried that, not on myself, but on animals. I never did too much with it, but I did try. And so whenever you think about reward or addiction, you should think about the VTA, ventral tegmental area, and the nucleus accumbens, and of course, dopamine. And I thought he got rid of it, but we're coming. Let me see if there's anything else. Just more a vignette there. But there's Maslow. I thought Maslow was gone. A colleague of mine who did research on this said that he thought Maslow ended up in fundamental psychology books because people liked the graphic. And a person did a presentation to faculty saying that this hierarchy is not supported in human research, but he was sure it was going to be true for countries. So he was going to go study it for countries. It's a nice graphic, if it were only true. Counselors, sometimes the people who run over the administrators that oversee student government, they are often very pro Maslow. I wish they weren't. So it has face validity, but does it have real validity? Hunger. In the news, there was just an NPR story about a teenage girl who had surgery for obesity, which was poignant. Body weight set points, an important concept, which we've already seen with the steam heat. It's hard to move away from your set point, but these are classic pieces of research. There's the ventromedial hypothalamus. Why is it? Because it's ventral and it's medial. And so, on the left, it shows you roughly where to cut to see it, and there it is. And you get what looks like a change in set point. The animal eats way more, way more than it used to, until it gets to a new set point. And then if you force them to go above that set point, they go back. I think that was the first surgery I did when I came to Scranton long ago, was to try to lesion that. We were going to do it as a lab project for behavioral neuroscience. It did not work. Then there's the lateral hypothalamus. And there's a graphic on that. Of course, the lateral hypothalamus is more lateral, and they can reduce body weight. So that's kind of classic. Basal metabolism, if you're a dieter, you certainly understand that. And Walter Buchanan, Wisdom of the Body, homeostasis, you don't like being messed with. So this is depressing for those of you trying to lose weight. The purple line is caloric intake, and they nailed it. They reduced it by a huge amount, and basal metabolism slowed down, and you did lose weight, but not tons of weight. Glucose is very important to this, and national obesity, particularly in children, is important to this. We used to have a type of obesity that we called adult onset obesity, and unfortunately now we're getting that in children because our diet is so messed up. I almost can't watch when I see parents with children shopping in Garrity's. So much sugar. And there's something healthy. An orange, not a fan of orange juice, but oranges. And glucose, glycogen, fat. That's an important story. And what controls appetite? Lots of things. And the stomach is important to both That research was done by Walter Buchanan, 1912, where people voluntarily swallowed a balloon with a tube that connected to recording equipment outside. And so they could watch contractions affecting the tube, the balloon. And of course, when it's squeezed, the pressure goes up. And that does correlate with reports of hunger. Nice going, Walter Buchanan. And hormones are important, and the arcuate is really important to a lot of stuff. And there are some graphics coming up that may give you a headache. But if you stay calm and look at them and interact them with the text, you will, there we go. So now we're eating apples, and we're talking about leptin and insulin and hormones from the stomach. You have the arcuate nucleus right down on the bottom with leptin and insulin influencing cells in there. And then those cells are influencing the VMH, ventromedial hypothalamus, and the lateral hypothalamus. So VMH increases food intake, LH decreases food intake. Leptin is, leptin and insulin are very important. Most cells in your body can't metabolize glucose unless insulin is present. So insulin levels are very important. And when I was you, I don't think we knew about leptin, but we certainly do know about leptin now. And here comes a nice picture. So these animals have a deficit in production of leptin, and on the left, they just let it run. But on the right, they gave injections of leptin, and you get a much more normal mouse. And there are, certainly there are families issues with obesity, and that again reminds me of the public radio thing today. And BMI, it's certainly not perfect, but it's better than nothing. And based on BMI, 70% of the adults in the United States are overweight, and a third are obese. I used to drive from Scranton to California every summer for about a decade after I came here. And BMIs in UCLA campus were quite a bit lower than average BMIs in Scranton. Another thing that differentiated UCLA from Scranton was they didn't smoke. And then I'd come back here, and oh my goodness, so much smoking. You could almost see BMI increase as you drove toward the East Coast. And there are depressing data. Everybody went nuts trying to get fat out of foods. That's a little bit like our war on drugs. It didn't work. The big sugar really liked it. And there's a table with different BMIs, smaller portions of food. We had a famous food researcher speak at the University of Scranton and compared food portions here versus France. It's crazy different. Crazy how much more food they will put on your plate here. And breakfast, yes, for reasons no one quite understands, eating a healthy breakfast helps reduce body weight. Eat a good breakfast. That's not what you want to skip. Health. Michael Pollan There's an author I like a lot. I haven't exposed you to him. Uh, he, he's a good one. And here comes a neurotransmitter system that I'm interested in because I used to be interested in pain and pain inhibition, endocannabinoids. And they're involved in eating and pain control and the development of the nervous system. They're important. So anti-obesity surgery, liposuction, I still see ads for that. It really doesn't do much. But this type of surgery can produce pretty dramatic effects. The other thing that they will do is, decrease the size of the stomach. So in France, you probably wouldn't notice it, but in the United States, you can't eat your gigantic meals. Zucker, there's a famous name in eating research, which he developed a strain of rats that became known as the Zucker fat rats. They looked a bit like the mouse you saw earlier. So the woman in the NPR story got bariatric surgery and had a dramatic reduction in eating and improvement in her life. Anorexia nervosa can kill you. It's not something to laugh at. And I have so much trouble looking at people with anorexia. We had, I believe, a president of the psychology club who had anorexia and dropped dead, getting up to change the channel on the TV. Family-based treatment can be important for this. There's an interest, it does affect women more than men, and there's an interesting history to it. It's complex, and it can be so debilitating. And again, it can kill you. And bulimia or bulimia nervosa, sometimes you can smell these people because there's an acrid smell when after vomiting, and it's rough on teeth. This can kill you too. Sexual behavior. There's the classic picture of rats with the male mounting from behind and the female in lordosis position. I forget whether this mentions lordosis, but you may not know it, but she's got a gigantic tail back there. And if she doesn't get that out of the way, that's not happening. So coitus, intermission, copulation, ejaculation, semen, which is a mixture of fluids, and in simpler organisms like rats, very stereotyped. In humans, we are much more diverse. So here's a story, and I've given you a link to a lecture that Mark Breedlove gave on this issue. And so the male guinea pigs are castrated. Of course, their testosterone levels go away. They've been divided into high drive, medium drive, and low drive. Everybody goes down. And then you start taking testosterone, low dose or high dose. And the low dose does a quite remarkably good job. High dose may be a little bit better for the the low drive animals, but may not. And then there's tons of words: gonads, testes, ovaries, androgens, the primary one being testosterone. I tried to follow up on some of Mark Breedlove's research involving testosterone, and I never got anything too great with it. But boy, yeah, he nailed it. I'll give you. I have links posted on that. Estrogens and progesterone, and castration. On that for some reason, I forget why. Rats have gigantic testicles. They're just monstrous. So there's sexual receptivity of female rodents across their cycle, which is about 4 days. And that, I don't know, is that mustard, orange, whatever that color is, sexually receptive will show lordosis, and ovulation happens roughly in the middle of that. So when that's going on, your estrogens are kind of going down, your progesterone is a little bit going down too, but it just peaked. And birth control pills deal with these kinds of drugs, these kinds of hormones for various purposes to try to prevent pregnancy. Sexual behavior is neither, in human sexual behavior, is neither a stereotype nor as hormonally dependent. Kama Sutra is famous, 2,000 years old. I had to take a flight across the country next to a woman reading that. That was distracting. And these are masturbation, men and women, different age groups. And then research into sexual behavior. Kinsey and his colleagues were made a big splash with their research. There's I think there's a movie. There's a movie on the Kinsey research, and there's a problem with research. It probably oversells some issues, but at least they did it. And there's Masters and Johnson. They did much better research, and think they are still highly regarded. And now we get to the human sexual response, which is somewhat different between males and females. There's the male on the top, orgasm, and then refractory. And sometimes after a while, after the refractory, you can have another orgasm. But women are very different, different patterns of behavior. Sometimes no orgasm, that red line. Sometimes you can have multiple orgasms, no refractory period. So this research that that I forgot that the clitoris, Kama Sutra doesn't even mention it. And Sigmund Freud comes up again, and hopefully he goes away quickly. But this is, there was a book, Women Are From Venus, Men Are From Mars. This is a bit like that. So someone on campus chats you up and then asks one of three questions. They could be a male, they could be a female. Would you go out with me tonight? Do you want to come over to my apartment tonight? Or do you want to go to bed with me tonight? And look at the stupid males. They're the same as the females, go out, but come to the apartment, oh, the males are into that. Women say, I don't think so. And then would you go to bed with me? Males are even more into it, and women just completely go away. And I don't think it's in this chapter, but you might try to predict what women do when they are asked that third question. Basically, one of two things: they get angry and walk away, or they laugh. They laugh at you in your face. You got to be kidding me. Um, there are differences, and hormones, menopause. For some, it's not a big deal. For some, it is a pretty big deal. And testosterone is related, but it's not like life and death. And men are always buying supplements to increase their testosterone. It really probably doesn't do anything worth doing. Um, and there's sexual desire, uh, and women respond to testosterone. They respond to testosterone. And in terms of sexual desire and fantasies, by the way, consuming alcohol can lead to an increase in testosterone. So if you want to become attracted to a loser, drink with them. And there's more about Brenda. Like a lot of these stories, they're depressing, as we will see. But definitely, Brenda's brain was changed by the exposure to androgens pre-development, and we're going to get to some of that. So undifferentiated fetuses, very hard to sex at that point early in gestation. But once androgens kick in, things become a lot more clear. And androgens are very important for differences in construction between males and females. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but it's very difficult to sex a baby based on their face, which gets back to some research I've done, although I didn't do it with babies. Baby X studies, the X is not the X chromosome, it's babies who could be interpreted as being males or females. And the question is, does society treat male and female babies differently? And they do. I had a colleague who had a daughter, and boy, he was death on her becoming obsessed with Barbies and stuff. He said there'd be no Barbie in his house. Well, he was wrong, because she wanted it and she got it. And there's some relevant data on that in a bit. So sexual differentiation, XY, XX, testosterone, no testosterone, and different body parts, gender identity. They will interact differently with the child, reinforcing one gender role or the other in the child's brain. organization of the nervous system continues after birth, and the nervous system affects behavior, social factors can affect the nervous system, but almost certainly not sexual orientation. And then adult. So that happens. This is the way it goes with most people, but certainly not everyone. And Mark Breedlove uses the term gender identity. Term sex and gender are often used interchangeably, but he goes with gender, which is an interaction between biology and the environment. And there, why aren't there more women scientists than engineers? That's an interesting box. And of course, it's correlational. Well, it used to be not correlational. We wouldn't let women into certain things, but male and female do seem to differ a bit in the career paths that they take. So you can see across from 1930 to 2010, there's not a very strong trend there. There just isn't. And the box does a good job of discussing why that may be true. And we want to know what gender someone is. So man, and then older children, woman, the 2-year-old, but the 3 to 4-year-old can't be fooled. Man in a wig. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia, CAH, the condition caused by secretion of excess testosterone by the adrenal glands, and they can cause genitals to look at birth very much like male genitals, and the genitals of this baby look like something in between those of most boys and girls. The child is a genetic female with congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This can affect your genitals. Can it affect your brain? And all those people are androgen insensitive. So that's an androgen insensitivity syndrome. So you can have tons of androgens, but you don't respond to it. And if you don't respond to it, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, was there a sound? And testicular steroids masculinize the developing brain of animals and perhaps humans. There's some reasonable evidence for humans. This is a very nice figure. So you have a sensitive period right around birth, a lot before, a little bit after, and testosterone. My mother always complained that I curled her hair from the womb, cranking out testosterone. So untreated males, endogenous testosterone around birth, and you test them with the male, no lordosis. Test with the female, they mount. Female, no testosterone. Test with the male, lordosis. Of course, it depends on whether progesterone and estrogen are collaborating and mounting. So here's a female that after birth, right after birth, is Mark and his future wife did this kind of research. They would treat the females with testosterone during the sensitive period, and the treated females as adults, no lordosis, and they mount, and you have castrated males and that's really what his wife did. A lot of castrations, and you get lordosis and no mounting. And so hormones are important for the organization of the brain. The organizational hypothesis, the proposal the brain is permanently masculinized by androgens during development. And we've seen this concept of sensitive period earlier. And I remember this very well. So this researcher published an article. Oops, wait, hold on. Well, it's related. It's not this one. But the sexually dimorphic nucleus of the preoptic area, STNPOA, it's bigger in males. It's not too subtle. So you can section the brain and see a much bigger STNPOA in males than females. But if you take females and right after birth give them testosterone, they end up with a male type sexually dimorphic nucleus of the preoptic area. And females, if you give them testosterone after the sensitive period, it really doesn't do anything. We're getting there. Okay. Toy play. So boys and some females, they have clear toy preferences. And girls with CAH, purple ones, they tend to like boy toys more than typical. And Melissa Hines is down there in 1992. So the brains of females, human females, can be masculinized. They can affect toy preference, and also whether they engage in rough and tumble play. Remember the vignette from the beginning of the story, of the chapter. This is amazing. Juvenile monkeys, males prefer to play with cars and balls, while females prefer playing with dolls, which I understand. But pots? You got to be kidding me. And that's Hines again. Prenatal exposure to hormones. So let me go to what I posted for you. We're going to come up on finger ratios in a second. This is a whole talk by Mark Breedlove on sexual orientation. If you want to hear his voice and listen to his talk, I'm certainly not assigning them. There's Hines. And she was at UCLA when Mark was there. And the person who did that androgen exposure and the larger or smaller sexual dimorphic nucleus, that was another researcher at UCLA who was there at that time too. This is an excellent book if you're at all interested in this topic. And for reasons I can't explain, I have 2 copies of this. I can explain it. I thought I left it on the plane, and I didn't. I used to go to neuroscience every year with one book that I wanted to talk to my friends with because I really had no one to talk to at Scranton. And I read this book, and I got to the last chapter, and she said, "This is why I call this book Brain Gender." And I said, "You called it what?" and I had never looked at the title. It's a brilliant book. It deals with lots of things, including relevant statistics. She is wicked smart. She's now in England, but at one time, she used to play softball with us at UCLA. Mark never did, but Melissa Hines did. And there's UCLA's. This is before the Olympics. They had not built Olympics buildings back here, but this is Melissa Hines. There's a lot of bright people in that picture. A lot of bright people, excluding me. But again, that's Melissa Hines. Softball. And here's her research from the 2000, an abstract of the 2002 article from APA, which I'm not a fan of. And sex differences in response to children's toys and non-human primates. This has been replicated a bunch of times, which makes her very happy. And this is the whole article. I'm not assigning these. I'm just exposing you to these. And there's the whole article. But one thing I wanted you to see is way down here. Well, those are the data on toy choices. Kind of boring graphics, but there's the photo. It's very famous. So those are two, a female on the left and a male on the right playing with toys. And the female is getting very cozy with the toy doll. And the animal on the right, they just walk up to wheeled vehicles and they start playing with them, just like male human children. And these animals were not exposed to these behaviors. They just do it. It's shocking. And I still can't get over the pots. I do not understand the pots. I understand the dolls. I do not get the pots. Okay, so we'll come back to some of this in a bit. So now we're dealing with sexual orientation, hetero, homo, bi, and different terms that we use for these sexual orientations. And males and females are not the same in terms of how exclusive they are with their preference for their sex of choice. But that's pretty dramatic. Men are more likely than women to be homosexual exclusively. That's a huge, huge difference. And nature seems to have some influence on sexual orientation. And now we're coming up on what brought Mark and I together a while ago. There are several aspects of the body that are affected by prenatal testosterone and can be measured in adulthood. Physiological responses of the ears. Women have more sensitive hearing. Pattern of eye blinks. I actually don't know that one. Length of the bones in the fingers and limbs all seem to be affected in a subtle way by prenatal uh, testosterone. And this thing down the bottom is really, so there's a picture of the hand, 2D40 ratio. Mark did it first, and then I tried to copy him. By the way, if you're trying to figure out your 2D40 ratio, don't do it that way. This always reminds me of Beauty and the Beast. If you want to know how big the candle is, you do not measure from the tabletop, because then you're measuring the candle holder. So the metacarpals down here don't count. You have to measure these fingers specifically. And right hand tends to work better. So heterosexual, so it's 2D divided by 4D. And you can see that heterosexual men and homosexual men have 2D40 ratios that are somewhat below 1. If the fingers are even, you get a 2D40 ratio, any number divided by itself, you get 1. So males and homosexual males, heterosexual males and homosexual males are both down around the 0.955, which is not crazy different. You couldn't see it just by looking. Heterosexual women are approaching 1, but homosexual women are a little bit intermediate, but they're certainly not 1. So let's go back to my links. This is what got me going. Mark got into Nature, which is one of the premier journals on the planet Earth, with this one. Finger length ratios and sexual orientation. And there's a million people there. There's Mark, and there's his wife. And the abstract is pretty good. Sensitive people. The older brother is a weird one. And prenatal androgens may affect adult sexual orientation in both sexes. But in terms of the finger ratios, that's mostly females. And the older sons, I should have asked Mark what that's about. I'm sure he's thought about it. And here's how we do it. So you put both hands down on a bed scanner, and this is the right hand, and you measure the length of both fingers. Now you measure from the crease at the bottom of each finger. Again, you don't measure the candle holder, you just measure the candle. So you go from the crease to the fleshy tip, fingernails don't count, from the crease to the fleshy tip, and you take the 2D and divide it by the 4D. That looks like a male hand to me. The fourth. In males, this finger is longer. And there's Mark's talk, which we're not going to play, but he's great. You might wonder where fingers come from. Fish. This is a brilliant book, and some of his research was done in Pennsylvania, and he's now in Chicago, Neil Shubin, but he did some of this when he was at Penn, and you can see what's going on there. And I remember looking at the bones of many different species and bats and whoa, the bones, we have the same bones. They're different sizes, but we have the same bones. That was a flashbulb moment for me as a child. And if you've got time, I'm not assigning it. I would watch your inner fish. He is cute as a button and really bright. And this is a 3-part series from PBS. Your inner fish, sensitive one, how the genetic legacy of fish can be seen today. Inner reptile, which parts of our bodies are inherited from reptilian ancestors, and our inner monkey. I know that monkey. When I was in grad school, one of the researchers had those. Okay, so those are all my links. I'm not assigning them. Just there to make things more interesting. But this brother story is really odd. With each additional older brother, the likelihood that a male will be homosexual increases. But, as the next page demonstrates, only if you're a righty. Dude, what's that about? And then you remember the SDN POA, but Simon LeVay back in 1991 did research on heterosexual and homosexual males and females, and the data are down here. And that was published in Science, and that was a very big deal. And in Scranton, I wanted to give a talk. I thought it might be controversial, so I wanted to give a talk. And I was walking up to the neuroscience meeting, and I saw Mark about a block in front of me. And I ran up to him and said, Mark, this Simon LeVay research, what do you think? And he liked it. And there's the human brain. There's the interstitial nucleus of the anterior hypothalamus, and it's sexually dimorphic. But homosexual males have a smaller INA3 than heterosexual males, and the size is not significantly different from females. I didn't believe this so much. I used graphics technology to steal these dots from the Science article and reran the statistics, and it's true. And this is the sad ending. Bruce became Brenda, became David. Really sad. I don't like these sad stories too much, in case you can't tell. Social motivation, and then, Maslow again, which I really don't feel like it, and I feel like a very warm feeling toward need for affiliation. He talks about different types of needs. And there she is again, DePaulo. I could say that she's a Scrantonian, but she's really a Dunmorian. And she spoke at the University of Scranton, and she does research on lies, and really, really clever research. And who do we lie to? And there are data from her. We certainly lie to strangers. We lie more than we probably should to romantic partners, but much less so to spouses. I guess once they're a spouse, you don't have to worry about it so much. IO psychology, it's often a question where to put this in books. And these people can make a pound of money, and they're often very statistically oriented. Um, and there's, this closing section, which seems possibly a little out of place. We had a graduate who became an IO psychologist for Pepsi. Try to imagine how much money she made doing that. And she brought in a friend of hers who was an IO psychologist for the FBI. They do important stuff. And there's Hawthorne, which Western Electric, Hawthorne, the interesting research has been done there. And the Hawthorne effect is something you have to watch out for if you're doing research. People react to being observed. And if you're not careful in your design, you can really get confused about what's going on. You have to be able to do good science. Distracted by food, and they talk about anorexics and I think bulimics. I don't understand modern hamburgers. I see ads on Facebook all the time for these local hamburger places. No mouth could eat even that hamburger, and that's small by Facebook standards. What's the deal with the giant vertical hamburgers? I don't, and that's the end of that tune. That was a very good chapter, and Mark Breedlove really understands this stuff and continues to do a lot of research on it, including some fingers. But he does sexually dimorphic nuclei in the spinal cord, which I don't think he discussed, which is very important and very good. Mark Breedlove was the last keynote speaker we had for the psychology conference. I think we did the psychology conference for 27 years. And then they moved me out of the psychology department for a while, and that was it. Psych majors would not cross the street, and it died. That running a psych conference requires a lot of work. And that's the end of that. Boy, we're coming close to the end of the course. I hope you've been having some fun. This is a very important course to real life.